Still on this morning on ITV, your flagship program, and flying on the wing of nationalism, and you, from independent television, ITV, broadcasting live from Papi Hill here in Abuja, you are welcome to the second segment of discourse on nationalism and you. I am Ebenezer Oyetakin, your host, with two gentlemen in the house. We have Idowu Olufemi Aristotle, alias Aristotle.
Good morning, Nigerians. Good morning from everywhere you are watching us.
And in the spirit of nationalism and you, I said, you.
It is my duty and responsibility to be responsible and give information that will lead to the progress and success of my nation.
You are very welcome.
I am glad.
It is a program for nation builders. We are a community of nation builders. And I come to the second guest, Barrister Rilwan. Barrister Rilwan Okpanashi. You are welcome to our studio, and I say nationalism and you.
It is my responsibility to build this nation.
It is our duties and responsibility to build this nation, and in the process and spirit of nation builder, we are taking a look at the topic, presidential primaries. Do we prefer to go it by elections or by consensus? This discourse comes into place because in the recent times we have been seeing more drive towards consensus. And we all, as political students, because in political science you hardly can graduate, we keep on learning every day.
Yeah.
As political students, we want to say the elementary requirement of democratic participations is the right of the people to make a choice through elections. So, as we are racing towards party primaries and with the deluge of presidential aspirants and other aspirants at the subnational government level, what are you expecting? A presidential primaries of consensus or?
I think to start with,
election.
You once said it at the last segment of this program, that democracy is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So every democratic process ordinarily ought to go through electioneering process. So it is a disservice, it is an infradignitatem on the democratic process itself when you now suggest a new term, consensus. It is not normal, it is abnormal, it is not supposed to be. An electioneering purpose is supposed to bring about democratically elected people that are adjudged to have been chosen by the majority. We are not running feudalism.
Many will also query you that in a situation where a political party envisage that there will be crisis if they allow it to be thrown open just like that, and that is a necessity for.
And that is when we are not becoming democratic, and that is why I am worried about this current tenet and tendency that is currently ravaging around the political parties, because it is not healthy for our system, for crying out loud. We have transited, we have a nascent democracy between 1999, 2003, 2007 until a year when we stopped giving it out, though some people still believe that Yaradua was compensated because of his elder brother, so a military man was still there, somebody with a military background, you understand. Now we are in a process where you have a good luck who has no military orientation or background, and it can be seen that what generated, what necessitated, and what permutated 2015 process of bringing a retired General Buhari is an outcry of the fact that probably Goodluck has failed to use his powers as the president of the country, and you require a firm and strong hand to rule the nation. And before you can say Jack Robinson, we are back to a general transmitting from a uniform to an agbada. And I am happy that 2015, 2019, at least we've seen it. The Yorubas used to say that until a woman tests 2 husbands.
But definitely you will understand that it is not about you being civilian or being military. Military have equal right of participation in political process. It happens even in United States. Many of the United States presidents in the past have military background.
Fact, majority of them, sir, they have military backgrounds.
Right.
So I am not dissipating that we should not have people with military background. But what I'm saying is, if we are saying a democratic process, we have a democracy. And 2015, 2019, thank God, 2023, we may not, apart from maybe former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who was a custom officer, majority of the people that are coming on board, I think as at the last count, I have 44, you understand, that have shown interest in different parties. 15 from PDP, 15 from the ruling party, you have ADC 5, the Mogalu, you have AAC Showore, you have PRP, you have Peshiensky, you have even Kola, so we have volumes of people to choose from. So you should give them a level playing field to show what they are capable, to let us know what they are capable of doing, instead of feudalism or imperialism that we just choose for the people without them.
I am the anchor here. Yes, Barrister Okpanachi, what are you expecting? Only yesterday at the National Executive Council of the APC, and we are not talking about APC alone here, we are talking about APC, PDP, and other political parties. The fear of Nigerians is that parties seem to be hiding under the umbrella of consensus instead of allowing elections to flourish, which is the bedrock of contemporary democracy. What are you expecting? And yesterday, President Muhammadu Buhari at that Executive Council meeting of the APC emphatically said, allow us to obey our party manifesto and constitution and do not impose leader. Your take.
Thank you very much. I think Nigeria is a constitutional democracy by virtue of our constitution. That is the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended. And we also have an electoral act that is anchored on the Constitution being the ground up. And the electoral act provides for 3 means of conducting parties primaries. And it suggested that it provided for consensus, provided for direct primaries or indirect primaries. And to that extent, consensus is lawful, indirect primary is lawful, and direct primary is lawful. And I don't want to subscribe to the idea that consensus is undemocratic. No, it is democratic. In that, let us even look at the meaning of consensus. It means the persons interested have agreed on a common position. There cannot be consensus without everybody, considering to that particular situation. For even under the Act, for you to say you have a consensus candidate, all the participants, all the aspirants must agree. The moment one person disagrees, there is no consensus, and that is consensus. And before you arrive at a consensus, there will be, discussions. There will be alignment and realignment and whatever. And at the end of the day, you discover that the consensus candidate is usually, the popular candidate. But even if you go into it, because we've seen it in several elections, even in the APC convention that took place of recent, there are some persons that refuse to concede to the idea of consensus. That is to tell you that it's not compulsory. If you are not willing to concede to it, you go into the contest. But you could see the outcome. Those who were not ready to abide by the consensus arrangement went into the poll and they were defeated. Because for you to have somebody as consensus candidate, it shows that the generality of the stakeholders must have been considered to that person. That is practically different from imposition, which was what we experienced in the past. For instance, under the PDP, when Jonathan was coming for re-election, only one form was printed. Even when other persons were, asking to be given opportunity, they were not given opportunity because it was. So that was clear case of imposition. You cannot call that out consensus. But in a situation where people are allowed to purchase forms, go about their campaigns, and at all the parties now come together, say, okay, let us sit down on the round table. It is better for us to come together as a family, look at ourselves, look at our capabilities and our, shortcomings, and see who will best represent our interests. And if you are ready to consider that, let us agree. So that is different from pure imposition. So consensus is, a way of dousing tension within the political party. To me, it's not the best option for every political party. But political parties, they appreciate their own internal problems. They appreciate they have their own internal mechanism of resolving a conflict and managing situations. So if political party comes up with a consensus arrangement and there is no evidence that somebody is coerced or forced into accepting that, that means it's lawful, particularly that the Electoral Act provides for it. So you have principally three means of electing your candidate. Whichever one you adopt, it is lawful by virtue of the Electoral Act. And then when you talk about the issue of whether it is democratic or it's not democratic, we have said so. To the extent that you still reserve your right to say no to that consensus arrangement, is democratic. To the extent that you can still contest even when other persons must have reached. If you have 30 aspirants, 20 can come together and say, among us, this is our consensus candidate. That consensus candidate will now contest with the remaining 9 or 10 persons. So that is something. So to the extent that your right to say no to that arrangement is not taken away from you, you cannot say it is democratic. It is this democratic. 100 or 1 million people may not go into primary before you say it is democratic. And even that consensus arrangement, if you are taking as a consensus arrangement, there is still arrangement for parties to return the members of the parties or the delegate to return the person elected. By even coming out to vote, it's not enough that you have said you are declared
in the electoral bill, in the electoral act that the president recently signed into law, one of the recommendations made by the National Assembly in their wisdom in order that we may preclude the consensus that are not consenting was that every consenting aspirant that agreed to consensus should produce a letter affirming that yes, this consensus is not true with hooking and things like that and the rest of it. Now, does that not presupposes that the National Assembly have over the 22 years of our democracy seen all patterns of so-called consensus that are ordinarily not truly consenting? For example, everybody respects President Muhammadu Buhari. His voice and his mien is that converge honor. And you want, after about 2-3 postponement of national convention and the fear of further postponement, all the aspirants were packed to his front, and he said, I want you to concede to this particular man. And in the presence of Mr. President, not that the aspirants met on their own and say we are consenting and the rest of it, and they all went in the name of consensus. The PDP also did their own. They went through consensus of that nature. Are these truly consenting? Because it appears some members of APC are still silently and quietly revolting against that so-called consensus. Your take?
Yes, sir. But we must also appreciate, what happened before that event that you just described. It's on record that the governors that represent the interests of their state came together as a body and approached the president. I mean the governor of All Progressive Congress, APC, and pleaded with the president to indicate interest in who will be the national chairman of the party, particularly that in their various states they have a say as to who becomes the chairman of their party. And the president, who was not having any interest before, had to zero down on somebody. And you could see that even when the president zeroed that, to show that the president is democratic, he ensured that that particular person was able to reach out to other persons, political leaders, presidential aspirants, and whatever, before even the meeting that you were talking about. And the meeting was called, a dinner was was held, and he pleaded with them that, look, in the interest of our party, you can shoot your sword, you can for now drop your interest and let's adopt the person. And they willingly accepted the person. You can say that, okay, maybe because of the influence of the president, maybe because of the respect they have for him, but whether we like it or not, it was still a consensus arrangement. And all of them decided to pull out of the game, and the national chairman now emerged as the national chairman. You see, Nigeria is not, we are not operating in isolation. Even in America, a sitting president is always considered as a consensus candidate of his party. You hardly see contests against a sitting president, particularly as it has to do with the presidential candidate ticket of the party. So it's like that everywhere. The president will always have that leverage. You understand? You always have that influence among the political parties. But you still have the right. Some persons who were not comfortable with that consensus arrangement, they're pulled out of the party. So the party also appreciate the fact that if this thing is done well managed, and you don't try to extract from the people the sincere commitment, even after accepting the consensus or forcing them to accept, they will leave the party.
After 22 years of democracy, should we be shrinking the democratic space through consensus that are not consenting, or should we be expanding the democratic space through elections by voluminous people's participation?
I think we need the voluminous people's participation more. I think you have just used the right word, that the consensus is not consenting. Because even in Osun State, look at what is currently happening in Osun State PDP. The majority of the people, you understand, somebody is said to be Senator Adeleke is said to be the flag bearer of the party, but I can confirm to you that the majority of the stakeholders in Osun State are for another person. And like you said, at the just concluded APC election, after postponement upon postponement, you understand, people were made to come before the president, and nobody there says no where the president is. So, and you still have dissenting opinions. Look at NNMP. Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso pulled out of the PDP because the consensus they have there is not consenting. It will not be commensurate with him, and he's coming out as a flag bearer from another party that nobody will even dare contest against him. And look at the PDP that you are talking about. The APC has zoned the presidency to the southwest, and you even see jokers to the south, and you see northerners even coming out trying to contest, so that at least they will eat up the political landscape. And what we are hearing, what we are thinking now, yesterday I think at their NEC meeting, it's now 100 million. And you see, look at their last convention. I have youths, I have people of 45, 55 that are of my caliber.
They don't have 100 million, so everybody will come out to run.
So they don't want everybody to run. They don't want a level playing field.
At least at the level of
their political party, they don't want a level playing field. They want the people to come out. And now look at the last convention that you are talking about. I have people that are more capable, that are more rooted, that have traveled the traversity of all the 36 states in order to contest. You see, if you are telling them that you are returning the money they use to buy form a loan, what of the money they have spent, what of the energy they have dissipated, what of the places, what of the commitment, what of the people that have considered to them that if you are given this opportunity to be here, you will represent us, only for the party to now say we have consensusly consented that this person. So returning their funds money, or consentingly or consenting, is not the right for our political system. Now we need a a broad space where everybody will have a level playing field. Look at APC now. If you are going to talk about consensus now, then you will now be talking of the party hierarchy and hegemony, who have spent what, who have done what. Look at PDP. Why PDP? I'm not saying, but why PDP may have it difficult in the next election, even if I have sympathy for them, is the fact that they said they are throwing the presidential team open when they are expected to zone it to the south. They are supposed to be decisive on it, but because they are afraid, the APC have already zoned it to the south. What we are having is whether it's going to be south, southeast or southwest, and we are thinking who will come. But look at the PDP now. If you are talking of consensus in PDP, everybody knows that consensus in PDP will give us an article. And no sane Nigerian, I'm sorry to say this on air, we want, because
you cannot be very sure of that, because we throw it open. They throw it open to allow for more participation. But the fact remains that who gets what, who have what more, who can dissipate more energy, who can spend more. And if you use that, if you use the hierarchy, then the consensus will not work. The consensus will not work because if PDP peradventure by mistake consensusly zoned give the presidential ticket to another northerner, there will be a national opprobrium to it from another section of the country who will feel a northerner has ruled for 8 years, and if you are coming under consensus because this person has spent more, let me not mention name now, when you expect somebody more viable that did not have the financial capacity that the consensus candidate will have emerges, then there will be national problem. And when there is a problem, people will dissipate. The truth of the matter is that the reason why we are discussing and preempting them, we do not see them doing consensus, though they have done consensus at their party level and the rest of it. And the reason why we are discussing this is in the best interest of the nation, because if at your party level you cannot encourage elections, how can you really encourages a flourishing elections at the national elections level and the rest of it, internal democracy? And if you have internal democracy in party that is very flourishing, then the internal democracy of the party will give birth to a more robust democratic outlook here. Now, while we are talking about this consensus of primaries and the rest of it in the midst of deluge of aspirants, is that we don't want the democratic space to be closed up against people's participation. If you are contesting, you have people, your followers, who have interest and expectations, faith in you, just like in you and the rest of it. If a single man decided to wield his own power in the name of consensus, have we not narrowed democratic space? Yes.
Please, one thing I want us to appreciate is that as an individual, I prefer direct primaries than the two other options. But I still want to maintain the fact that consensus is not undemocratic and it's not illegal. And in most cases, consensus is not a reflection of just an individual's interest. In most cases, it's a reflection of the interests of the political gladiators or the stakeholders within the party. And the party that is going for consensus is also aware of the effect of it in the general election. And sometimes they're trying to manage the internal problems before the general election. To me, if I have my way, parties should always go by direct primaries or alternatively indirect primaries instead of the consensus arrangement. But that does not render the consensus arrangement undemocratic or illegal. And when you talk about zoning, that PDP, APC has zoned to south and PDP is not zoning to south and Atiku is contesting whatever, that means we are contradicting ourselves. Because if we say the consensus is undemocratic, consensus and zoning now, they have symbiotic relationship. Because we are not saying that you are conceding that ticket to a particular region. It's consensus. Now you are conceding the ticket to a particular individual. It's consensus. So you cannot say you are against a political party conceding a ticket to one person, but you are in support of a political party conceding a ticket to one region. So that is so we need to be very fair as to what we are discussing. The fact remains that political parties appreciate the system, and most of the people that we are talking about that are being forced out maybe directly through consensus were also product of this same arrangement. They were product of consensus before now, so they understand what is going on.
If consensus is not truly consensus, what is the implications for the nation and the electoral system, our democracy? Supposing we go for consensus and the consensus is not actually in actuality consensing, so what is the implications for the nation and its democracy? Do you have that kind of a fear?
No, I don't have any fear. I don't have any, because we are practicing a multi-party democracy. We have different political parties, like you enumerated just now. So if as a result of consensus arrangement of one political party, people and Nigerians are not okay with the conduct of that political party, or even the members of that party are not okay with it, you have leverage to go to other political parties and support.
So you push people out of the political party they spend so much to build at the 0 hour. Yes, you.
Thank you very much. That is where I'm going. That
will that not overheat the political system?
It is overheating.
Electoral violence.
It is overheating.
Preventing those things that are preventable. That is why we are discussing this.
It is overheating the polity, because now you have people that are supposed to collectively work together to achieve a goal, that you now give opportunity to go and form a micro system that will not muster enough strength to achieve what we want to. Because like I said, if you want to use consensus, look at APC now. You want to use Iraqi, you want to use who has contributed more or who has done what more, and you have to beg others to step down or to agree that you should allow this person to lead, to the chagrin and the detriment of the people.
The election, why are we saying this? The election that produced President Muhammadu Buhari, the permanent election that produced him in 2015, you see how beautiful it was.
Yes.
About 5 people, contested against him, and the rest of it
was robust.
So they were even pleading some people to step down. They said they will not step down. They went for the election, and they said that it was squarely a defeat, and they accepted it and walked along with him to attain the rest of it. That is what we try to preclude, and the rest of it.
And that is where I'm going. Look at this 2023 that we are going. Peradventure in 2019, people like Austin Mogalu, people like Omoyele Sowore, other people agreed on a consensus, and they muster a front. We can be thinking of a second or a third force now, but we don't even have a third force. We have a system where we have only 2 parties that is hierarchically.
Yes, now you see, we can go on and on and on this topic, but we have gotten what we want to get for Nigerians. Now, if you have one single word for the government and for the people, what will it be?
The predictive ability of the world's intellectual class to lay a predictive emphasis on the past in order to get a future right is democracy. So what I would say is, let us give consensus, let people test their might and strength, let our democracy go for election.
Yes, partnership. Your one word.
Contest.
The consensus, direct primaries are democratic, but I encourage political parties to first go for direct primaries, and if they cannot go for that, go for indirect primaries. To me, consensus was.
Yes, our 2 guests and the nation agreed that we must, and just as what the president said yesterday, don't impose candidates. So let us continue to expand the democratic space. Let us continue to encourage democratic participation, and that is where we draw the curtain today on nationalism and you. Until next week Thursday, when you see us again, I remain your host, Ebenezer Oyetaki.